The secret world of P. Diddy was once hush-hush, but even though these wild allegations have since been exposed, there are still some pretty high-profile celebrities who've remained tight-lipped. Who are they, and why haven't they talked? This is Scandal, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Sierra Gillespie. We've got some big names for you today, Scandal Squad. Leo DiCaprio, Usher, Mariah Carey, Ashton, J-Lo. What do they all have in common? Well, they're all connected to P. Diddy, of course, and maybe more importantly, they've all been keeping quiet since his allegations first came to light. And by the way, quick reminder, what those allegations are? Well, besides the literal dozens of civil lawsuits that he faces, there are also a couple of federal charges, 5 in all: racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, and transportation to engage in prostitution. He's pleaded not guilty, and that trial is happening right now. And we've been covering this trial. You guys know this. We've gone through the transcripts. We've heard from Elizabeth Milner, who's been in the courtroom. However, there are things that have been popping up along the way, kind of ideas that we're getting or comments from you guys about couple of questions. And that's what today's episode of Scandal is all about. I mean, we've heard from a couple of celebs, Cassie, Kid Cudi, Don Richard of Danity Kane fame. But today is about those celebrities who have not talked. So let's begin with the king of the world himself, Leonardo DiCaprio, which I'm of course making a reference to Titanic. And if you have not seen Titanic, watch Titanic. Oh my goodness. Okay, Titanic. People love him. Late 90s, early 2000s, he's on top of the world, as I said, and he's kind of a party guy at the time, and maybe even still to this day. He was seen a lot at white parties, which are those very famous P. Diddy parties where everyone wore all white, and he was a pretty important guest at those parties, if you believe Diddy himself.
Who's the person that's number one on that invitation list?
Leonardo DiCaprio.
So we know they used to like to party together. However, since news of Diddy's allegations broke, we actually haven't heard much from Leo DiCaprio. Here's what we do know. This is what a source told the Daily Mail. And I always love this when it's a source close to Leo DiCaprio. Who the heck knows? But here's what this source said. Leonardo DiCaprio has absolutely nothing to do with any of this. He attended a few of his parties back in the early 2000s, but literally everyone did. They were not freak-offs. They were big house parties. Leo was at the start of his career at the time and has moved way past his partying. He has nothing to do with any of that world. So for anyone to assume that he will get roped into this based on a few grainy photos that are more than 20 years old is ridiculous. Leo is focused on his career and his relationship and is not at all thinking about Diddy's federal case, which has nothing to do with him. So you heard it straight from the mouth of a source that Leo has nothing to do with P. Diddy. Moving on to Naomi Campbell. Okay, so this is the early 2000s also. It's after his breakup with J-Lo, which by the way, we'll get to in a minute. And there were a couple of rumors that they started dating kind of to boost P. Diddy's rep. Now, this is a different source to Star Magazine. Here's what they said. After Jen's embarrassing kiss-off, Puffy got in his head that people thought less of him as a man. He was ready to do just about anything to change his image as a loser in love. Sean told Naomi that he desperately needed prestige on his arm to recover his ladies' man reputation. She promised to help by appearing in public with him, but she warned, "That's the only kind of boost you'll be getting from me." So there you go, another source talking about P. Diddy. And we did see photos of them in the early 2000s together, and their relationship did continue. I guess I said relationship. Friendship. I mean, they remained in contact, even most recently as November of 2023. This is Diddy's birthday party, and Naomi Campbell was there. She posted pictures of it. However, November 2023, a super important year in the world of Diddy. He celebrates his birthday on November 4th, and later that month, a lawsuit is filed by Cassandra Ventura. After that, Naomi Campbell and others like Janet Jackson delete all photos of them and P. Diddy from their social medias. And after that, stayed silent. Okay, on to Jennifer Lopez. We talked about her breakup with P. Diddy, right? And the potential of the Campbell-Diddy relationship. Prior to that, we've got Jennifer Lopez, J-Lo, Jenny from the Block, who dated P. Diddy, and she was actually there, involved in the 1999 nightclub shooting. And a quick refresher for anyone who's not super familiar with this. This was 1999. Times Square, there's a nightclub shooting. No one was killed. Some people were injured, though. Multiple people were arrested, including P. Diddy, Jennifer Lopez, and the rapper known as Shine. Charges against Jenny from the Block were eventually dropped. However, they weren't for P. Diddy or Shine. Now, Diddy went to trial. He's acquitted. Good to go. Shine, however, is not. He was convicted, served time, and then eventually was deported back to his home country of Belize after all of this. And in recent months, years really, since these P. Diddy allegations have came to light, Shine has come forward and said, actually, I took the fall for P. Diddy. He was the one involved. So anyway, J-Lo's part of that. That's kind of part of the origin story to how we got here with P. Diddy. They dated for several years. She actually brought him as her date to the Grammys when she wore that green dress and Google Images was started. So they were together for quite some time. However, they broke up. He potentially had a thing, who knows, with Naomi Campbell. However, Jennifer Lopez, no comment from her since all of this. We'll talk more about her in the interview too. I want to move on now to Mariah Carey, another singer. She had that really famous song, Honey, that actually has P. Diddy on the track. Now, she wrote in her memoir, it was called The Meaning of Mariah Carey, about a little incident with P. Diddy. At the time, she was married to music executive Tommy Mottola. And here's what happened. According to her memoir, Tommy said, "Puffy will be shining my shoes in 2 years." And here's what Mariah wrote. "It was one of the very first times I stood up to Tommy, telling him that what he had said was blatantly racist. I was pissed." So Mariah stood up for Diddy then and was like, hold it, no. And I think one of the reasons why this was so important for Mariah at the time is that she didn't have a great relationship, according to her, with Tommy Mottola. And so this is one of the first times she stood up to him. So that's really, important in her relationship, number one. Number two, then she's got this amazing track, Honey, with Diddy. After the allegations, though, she spoke up kind of, but not really. This is to the Los Angeles Times in October 2024. About Diddy's voice being featured on Honey, she said, "That's hard not to happen when stuff goes on and you hear somebody's voice on a record. You're like, it's weird, Honey was more a representation of me than anybody else. The other person wasn't really that involved." So that's really all she said about P. Diddy. He wasn't really involved. Has she talked about the allegations? No. On to another singer, Usher. You guys remember he lived with P. Diddy for about a year, ages 13 to 14. And on the Howard Stern show, he called this time pretty wild, saying that Diddy's actions and what he saw was pretty curious. Later on, he told Page Six, hell no, he would not allow his own kids to experience something like this. However, he hasn't spoken out about Diddy. There are so many questions. Did Usher see anything? Was Usher a victim? What happened? We don't know. On to Ashton Kutcher. He went to white parties. He actually co-hosted one of them. And in the early 2000s, he was really on top of his game. I mean, we've got Punk'd. We've got That 70s Show. At the time, he's married to Demi Moore. Ashton, I personally had a little trucker hat, if you guys recall those. I had a trucker hat that said Mrs. Kutcher on it. So people liked him at the time, okay? So he's pals with P. Diddy. However, these allegations drop. I mean, we've got the Cassie lawsuit in November of 2023. The allegations keep coming. The indictment comes, all of that stuff. Where's Ashton now? I don't know. We haven't heard about it. There were a couple of rumors out there that his now wife, Mila Kunis, was like, you are staying away from Diddy. We're not talking about this. Don't address it. No way. So there are some rumors on that end. But there are critics out there who are mad who say, okay, Ashton, you so many times have talked about your support for survivors of sexual assault or sex trafficking specifically, and now you haven't spoken out about this. Some critics also speculate that this silence in regards to P. Diddy has to do with Danny Masterson. So if any of you guys have followed along with this sect of things, this is actually probably going to be a completely different scandal episode. Danny Masterson right now is serving time. He's convicted of sexual assault. And here's how Ashton and Mila come in. Not only were they co-stars on That 70s Show, but they wrote a letter of support for Danny Masterson. And a lot of people got wind of that and thought, not a great look for you guys. We don't really like that. I mean, I actually had already planned that year for Halloween to go as Jackie and Kelso for Halloween. And I saw that and I was like, I'm not going to go as Jackie anymore. So then I didn't. So now I just have this That 70s Show outfit in my closet that I've yet to wear. All of this to say, some people are speculating They didn't have a great public reception after the promotion of Danny Masterson. So now Mila's saying, okay, no, don't say anything about Diddy. I want to now talk about Beyonce and Jay-Z, who have both been mentioned in lawsuits. This is a specific excerpt from one of the lawsuits filed by a man by the name of Joseph Manzaro. Here's what he wrote. Jay-Z and Beyonce Knowles Carter were seated in the room, and upon seeing plaintiff, Beyonce Knowles Carter asked, "What's this? What's this all about? Why is this half-naked white man with a something mask standing here in front of me?" Defendant Eric responded, "Diddy wants him to see what we do to snitches. This is part of his punishment." Interestingly, Beyonce and Jay-Z's names both removed from that lawsuit after it was filed. Jay-Z was also named in another lawsuit. This one was filed by Jane Doe. You'll recall that she alleged that P. Diddy and Jay-Z sexually assaulted her back when she was 13 after the VMAs. However, this lawsuit was completely dropped too. Moral of the story, I'm thinking don't mess around with Jay-Z because he seems to be pretty litigious. Here's what he said after that lawsuit was dropped. "Today is a victory. The frivolous, fictitious, and appalling allegations have been dismissed. The civil lawsuit was without merit and never going anywhere. The fictional tale they created was laughable, if not for the seriousness of the claims. I would not wish this experience on anyone. The trauma that my wife, my children, loved ones, and I have endured can never be dismissed. This 1-800 lawyer gets to file a suit hiding behind Jane Doe. And when they quickly realize that the money grab is going to fail, they go to walk away with no repercussions. The system has failed. The court must protect victims, of course, all caps. While with the same ethical responsibility, the courts must protect the innocent from being accused without a shred of evidence. May the truth prevail for all victims and those falsely accused equally." Jay-Z has since filed a defamation lawsuit against Jane Doe and Tony Busby, her attorney. He's been outspoken there, but not about P. Diddy. So what's going on with all these celebrities who are flying under the radar with P. Diddy? Well, let's ask our guest. All right, Scandal Squad, we've got an OG today. Our first ever guest is back again, Julie Rendelman, criminal defense attorney, Law&Crime legal analyst, the best of the best. Julie, thank you for coming on with us again today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Okay, great. So we're talking scandalous stuff
Believe
today,
me?
celebrities, of course. And
Yes.
actually, the stuff we're talking today is like celebs who haven't talked, like who were close with Diddy for a time and like seen with him at white parties and all the stuff. And now it's like, okay, where are you guys? What are your vibes? So, just generally, before I get into specifics, why is it that some of these people who were at white parties or could have been involved in some of this, why have they been keeping quiet?
I mean, why would they not keep quiet? I think is the better thing to ask. I mean, so like if we think about like all the people, and we could go for days of all the people that were known to be at those white parties. I, I mean, I don't know, like Britney Spears, Leonardo DiCaprio.
Mhm.
I mean, I honestly, we could go for days. And
So
if
many.
it was me and my publicist in terms of kind of what my guidance would be, it would be to keep my mouth shut. Pray to God my name is mentioned only in the most peripheral of ways, and hope that I get by unscathed.
And why do you think that is? Do you think it's only a reputational thing or that these people are worried about being pulled in some sort of lawsuit or something?
I think it's several things. I think one of the things is no one knows really what's going to happen in terms of this case. And so if I'm someone that was somehow involved um, in in this lifestyle or these white parties, I'm not going to speak out. Imagine if he gets acquitted, where am I at that point? And two, I think that I think there is a sense of kind of let's wait and see what happens. And I think again, I go back to praying that, the only thing that people hear is my name and nothing else. I don't think it means that much that I was at a white party. I think it means more if we start to get a little closer to some of the freak offs. So far, we haven't heard really anything with any major actors in regard or actresses regarding that.
Okay, which is kind of weird because going into this, you and I did so many P. Diddy stories where we were like theorizing what's going to come out in court. And we had all those civil lawsuits that we thought about these freak off parties as like major parties with all these celebrities, who's going to be there. And then when the government presents their case, it seems like more isolated that it's P. Diddy, one of these women, and then an entertainer, or maybe two or three. Like not these huge parties that at least I had in my head. So I guess if we're separating it in that way, like Leo DiCaprio, for instance, we know he was at these white parties, but we don't know anything about him having to do with any sort of these sexual assault things and stuff like that. So for him speaking out would probably be bad. Plus, Leo just like doesn't like to chat anyway, and he's kind of his own thing. I mean, what are your thoughts on Leo?
I mean, first of all, there's absolutely no evidence that we've ever heard that he's involved in anything to
Right.
do with this criminal enterprise or racketeering, or even was present at any of these events. Number one, and number two, in a sense, like I have to say, like, why does he need to speak out? Because because someone knew someone who knew him, or he was had a picture taken with Puff Daddy. I'm not sure he has an obligation to speak about this case. It's really not. I would assume it's not the center of the world for him. So I'd be, in a sense, surprised if many of these people spoke out. I've also got to say, Sierra, I think many of these individuals, especially people who take some level of pride in their reputation, knew better at the time. Like it recognized that life is a long race, and just because no one's stopping you at the moment from it happening doesn't mean in 5, 10 years it's not going to come out that you were involved in something that is going to destroy your career, which is what's happening for him now.
Okay, that's one of my questions too, like on the legal side of things. So, if these celebrities, let's just say, and I'm not naming names because we don't have any allegations, but I'm saying like maybe this happened. Let's say they witnessed something, these sexual assault
Well,
allegations, and they see it. Are they compelled to come forward and report this to someone?
they're not. They're not, and they weren't. I mean, there might be some evidence. Again, if they're just a witness, no. If they in any way took part, that might change the narrative of it. But there's nothing. First of all, there's nothing we've heard that indicates anyone else was criminally responsible. When I say anyone else, I don't mean anyone else. I mean the the famous actors and actresses that seem to be kind of peripherally involved. And so, no, they have no obligation. I mean, do they have an ethical obligation to step up or step away? Um, Maybe, but no legal obligation.
Okay, I want to talk about Jennifer Lopez because there were rumors about her in one of the lawsuits that she was never named. It was Celebrity B is the name, but a lot of people point to that allegedly she witnessed some assault. Now, this lawsuit was brought by a Jane Doe who has since completely dropped her lawsuit. Like it's gone. She named P. Diddy and she also named Jay-Z, but it completely was dropped. However, there were rumors that maybe Jennifer Lopez could have seen all of this happening. Now, according to your answer, it seems like if she saw it, she wouldn't be compelled to report it or anything. But some people are saying, okay, J-Lo, if you knew about these sexual assaults, like you should be, pro women. You should be vocal and saying, stand up for your rights. Like, what are your thoughts on J-Lo being quiet?
So a couple things. One is, if I remember, and I could be, and I might be making this up, but I could have sworn I
We'll
heard
see.
some. You'll tell me that there was someone who had said it might even be in the trial or outside of the trial that indicated that she really wasn't present for a lot of the events that occurred. And by the way, that might speak to a degree, because I'm going to say something different in a minute. To again, what we talk about reputation, recognizing that there's certain places you shouldn't be if you really want to have a career that lasts a long time. With that said, she was front and center in the old case in which the shooting happened.
Mhm.
If you remember, where he was acquitted. And so, what does that indicate? It indicates she probably was front and center to a lot more things than we think. We can use our imagination as to what it was that she saw. And again, I'll say that it's been years since she's been attached to him, and one is going to guess that she is a praying that her name stays out of it as much as humanly possible, and b that she's choosing to just hope that she can ride this and get out unscathed.
I think her name kept coming up a lot because number one, what you talked about, that 1999 nightclub shooting, because she was arrested during all of that. Like she was involved. And people knew her with P. Diddy in the early 2000s, that green Grammys dress. Like P. Diddy was
Right.
her date. Everybody knew that they were together, even though it's been multiple decades since all of this. And so, I mean, I even theorized on past episodes talking about, well, will the feds be talking to Jennifer Lopez? Could there be a subpoena? Will we see her at trial? And so I guess, is it possible that the feds did talk to her, interview her?
I think it's certainly possible that they tried to interview her. I mean, if I was her attorney, I would tell them, come back with a subpoena. I certainly wouldn't voluntarily be speaking. And I will say, I'm not excusing her, but she was pretty young when she was with him. I mean, we all have a lot of regrets of the men.
I do.
We just you, but
Only me.
some of us, right, some of us do have some regrets over the choices we made. um and she may not, she may fall into that category, let's just put it that way.
Yeah,
Even
I
more
mean,
recent choices for her, but hey.
that yes, she's had a roller coaster. She's had
Yes.
an interesting life, to say the very least. And I
Correct.
guess talking about subpoenas, if some of these major celebrities were subpoenaed, like we've already heard based on the court transcripts that some of the witnesses on the stand for the government were subpoenaed. Like they straight up say, I don't want to be here. I'm legally obligated to be here. So at this point, if someone was subpoenaed by the government, like a celebrity, don't you think we would have heard from them?
um Not necessarily. It depends. You can. So a couple things. One is sometimes someone will be subpoenaed, because, in a sense, they want the defendant to know and the world to know that they didn't want to be there. So there are times when an attorney will say to the government, subpoena us so that he can feel more comfortable, or she'll feel more comfortable getting up there and going, I didn't want to be here. Here's the subpoena. I was forced to come. Right. And so keep that in mind when someone is saying that. Two, there could have been many things that occurred along the way, in terms of individuals they subpoenaed, whether it be for the trial or for the grand jury, that we will never know about. That either they realized they didn't have enough evidence to provide, they weren't willing to give them immunity, or they just didn't have enough to get them on the stand. So, yes, I think that there could have been many more people that were potentially interviewed, and no, we may never know about several, if not many, most of them.
And actually, some of the witnesses have been testifying under pseudonyms, people who were survivors in all of this, with the exception of Cassie, who is a celebrity in her own right. I mean, she straight up said, this is my name, I'm testifying under it, all of that. So, is it possible in the future there could be another person who were to testify under a pseudonym who could be a celebrity and we just wouldn't know it?
So I mean, what are they going to call Leo
No?
DiCaprio? Like, I mean, no, I think, like, there's going to be people watching. So I think it would be hard pressed, for Rihanna to come in and say her name is, Judy, and no one would recognize who she was. So I'm gonna say a hard no on that one. Remember, a lot of these individuals that are using these pseudonyms really don't want their names out there. They don't, their real names. They're not. Some of them, in this case and other cases, don't want their life broadcast in front of everyone. And so I don't think we're going to see that happen. There was a recent situation where there was an apparent celebrity that they've been talking about, but they haven't provided the name in the trial. And I think the judge determined recently that that name is not going to come out at the trial. So he has at least worked to protect some of the individuals, including celebrities' names.
You brought up a good point, though, that like even with Jane or Mia testifying, we don't report their names, but it seems that they are out there in the ether because people can do the research and we're just, following the direction of the judge to try to keep their name and face on the DL. But for a celebrity, I mean, they already are an outward facing person. So I guess it's potentially kind of the name of the game. And I guess going back to some of the celebrities who haven't talked, just through a couple of others. The other ones I have written down include Usher, which is a question mark for me because a lot of people go back to him and they're like, He lived with Diddy when he was a child. Could he have witnessed anything or seen anything? He's a question mark. Or like Naomi Campbell, for example, who was partying with Diddy, and then all of a sudden the Cassie lawsuit dropped, and then she deleted her photos with Diddy. So people who were close to him have distanced themselves from him and not talked about it. And I'm wondering, could that be potentially because they know that P. Diddy is very litigious, that if they say something out of turn, he could come after them? Could that be one of the reasons too, not just reputational?
Yeah, no, that I think that's a fair point. I think most people are concerned about themselves. I mean, it's like I think about Jeffrey Epstein and every person that took a picture with him, and every person who did wishes to God they never took that photo op. And so, in a sense, I think it's the same thing here. I think most people are just really worried about themselves and their own reputation. And if they were going to speak out, it's going to be kind of that I knew him. I met him once at a white party, or I came for 5 minutes. Or I think people really want to stay away from it. Someone like Usher. Remember, he was again younger at the time. Who knows what he experienced? I mean, the same thing was talked about Justin Bieber, what he potentially went
Mhm.
through. But sometimes a good lawyer, I hate to say it, can kind of stand between the government and the client. And that we don't know what transpired to protect them from speaking to the government. And that's why we might not be hearing from them if that happened at all.
So if I'm a celebrity and let's say I went way back with Diddy and I went to these white parties and who knows, let's say I saw something one of these days. When all
Yeah.
of these civil lawsuits come out, when the indictment comes down and I'm like, wait a minute, I did see something. Okay. What do you think these celebs are doing? Like, are they going not only to their PR, but like their legal team too and saying, here's what I know, what should I do? Like asking for a playbook, a guidebook?
No, I mean, it depends. I mean, if I'm someone who look, have you ever, Sierra, been to a party where one of the individuals eventually was arrested? I mean, I'm sure, like we all,
I'm
I'm
sure I
laughing because
have.
I don't know what is your answer on that, and
The
who was
answer is, if I'm
it?
on the stand, probably.
But we've all like it's not a crime to be at an event. It's not a crime to know someone who committed a crime. And so I'm guessing that 99% of these individuals that we're talking about aren't worried at all. Those that were in the small world of Diddy and his team might have a different concern. And but I also think that we're far enough along in this litigation that we have a real sense, I think, by now as to who we're going to be hearing about and who we're not going to be hearing about. And I think it would be shocking if in the next 3 weeks, suddenly we're talking about some famous person, Naomi Campbell, just to be any of these people coming out and suddenly testifying against him. I just think that they'd be hard pressed for me to imagine that occurring at this point. Sorry to
So
disappoint, but that's what I think.
now I'm just thinking about all the college parties. I don't know. Who knows what happened? But
Exactly. But I
I
mean,
don't
like,
know.
you know, S happens.
Yeah, S happens. S word happens. Okay, so you
Right.
said that they probably wouldn't testify for the government. However, there have been kind of a couple of stragglers who have supported P. Diddy, like Kanye, for example, which no one's surprised about really, was like, excited about Diddy. Go Diddy. Let's get him out of MDC. But do you think that P. Diddy's team, the defense, could call any A-list celeb? No, no, they won't.
No, I'm a hard no. I mean, so here's the problem. Unless you certainly don't want them getting up and giving some type of character evidence. It opens the floodgates for the prosecution to bring out every negative thing he's ever done. So it would be an absolute fool's decision to do that. And certainly Kanye West, if you really want to lose the trial, you're gonna keep him as far away from as possible. That doesn't mean they're not going to call defense witnesses. It doesn't mean there won't be a witness or two that maybe someone knows or has heard of, but I don't think it's going to be the A-list caliber that would kind of get us all waiting outside the courtroom, to get their to get their autograph.
When before this trial happened, I was kind of putting it akin to to the Johnny Depp trial. You know, I was thinking they're going to be kind of similar because everyone was watching Depp. I mean, we did have A-listers like, for instance, Kate Moss. She was called in to testify. I mean,
Right.
virtually. She was there. We've heard from, you know, Johnny Depp. We heard from like A-list people.
Sure.
And so going into this, I was thinking, oh, it might be kind of similar, but it doesn't seem necessarily it's going to be that way. Maybe they could be mentioned, but not actually testifying. I guess we saw Kid Cudi, who's you know, pretty A-list. But okay, I want to ask another question too. I'm kind of segueing. He's Kid Cudi, we don't know. We did hear about Michael B. Jordan though, who I think
Right,
is an
which is
A-lister.
I like Michael B. Jordan,
But
so
I like Michael B. Jordan too, yeah. But he didn't testify, so it's not quite the same.
correct.
But okay, I
Correct.
have this written down. I wanted to ask about NDAs because it does seem like, according to some of the allegations, that P. Diddy would have these NDAs. Some people would sign them without even like really thoroughly going through them and all of that. So where is the line there? Like if something is illegal and you've already signed the NDA, you still are able to report it or talk about it, like to the government,
Correct.
right?
Yeah, it doesn't an NDA doesn't protect you from a subpoena, or a requirement from the government that you speak out or whatever, you know, that scenario is. It really doesn't have the effect that a lot of people think that it does. And so some of them will say, for example, if the government wants to speak to you or you're subpoenaed, you must tell us first. Like there'll be sometimes language like that. But no, an NDA is not going to protect you, the potential defendant, from these individuals eventually coming out and testifying against you.
Okay, that's what I thought. It does seem like some people who are not in the law world, I mean, myself included, if somebody gave me an NDA, I'd be like, wait, I'd probably
Right.
text you or call you, send you a photo of it and be like, okay, should I sign this? Like, what's,
I
you
can't wait
know,
to
I don't
hear
know
what
what the,
one's about. Like the NDA that you
I
would
don't know.
sign, that would just blow my mind.
I
But
don't know.
yes,
I'd be like, contact my attorney. Her name
but
is Julie Rendelman.
by the way, Sierra, that's exactly in a sense what its intent is to scare the living S word out of you.
Stuff.
So you as the person, whether it's Cassie or whatever, that is in a sense what the NDA is to scare you into keeping your mouth shut. I'm not saying all NDAs are bad. Please don't by any stretch, but you know, in many ways that is the purpose of it. And people don't realize that just because in certain ways, sometimes that's what it's meant to do. It doesn't actually legally prevent it from happening.
Now, I want to wrap up asking about the defense because right now, at the time of this recording, we're still in the government's case, but it seems like it's going to be wrapping up. And then we'll hear from the defense. And you're right there in New York. You know the names of these people on Diddy's defense team. They're pretty powerful attorneys who I'm sure have been preparing and ready to bring it. So, what do you expect from Diddy's defense?
So, you know, I think that a couple things. I think the prosecution has a ways to go, because remember, this case is not just about lack of consent. There is a racketeering aspect to this case that they really need to hammer home. This can't just be in a sense, what a state defense attorney would call kind of a DV state case. And so I think they need that there needs to be more provided for them to be successful. And I think, you know, the defense has been incredibly aggressive with each and every witness. And it's interesting because I'm not sure what they're going to bring. I think the only question we're all going to ask ourselves is if he's going to take the stand. Um, I think I'm going to guess he's not going to, because I don't think that he'll be great on cross examination, and I think it'll open the door to things that they don't want coming out. But I do wonder if they're going to have a limited amount of defense. That's my guess, that they're not going to have a ton of witnesses, but I could be wrong.
I guess we'll wait and see. I kind of feel the way you do, Julie, about Diddy taking the stand. I would love if he did, but the cross exam freaks me out like to no end. So if I was him, I wouldn't want to be up against all of that. I don't
Yeah,
know.
just
Lot to talk about.
yeah, he
Yeah.
does a lot of nodding as it is, so I don't know that he needs to testify.
He's already showing us how he feels about things.
Right?
But Julie
We already
Rendelman,
know.
thank you so much for coming on Scandal with us today. It's always so good to talk to you.
You too. Always good to see you, and I'll talk to you soon.
That's all I've got for today's episode of Scandal. Subscribe so that you don't miss any future episodes and continue to send us emails too. We love to see them. It's scandal@lawandcrime.com. I'm your host, Sierra Gillespie, and I'll see you next time.